Donald Trump dreamed of a parade. Not just any parade, but a dictator's parade, something straight out of Pyongyang or Moscow. He imagined tanks rolling down the streets of Washington, soldiers saluting him, fireworks exploding, crowds roaring his name in unison. A glorious spectacle to crown his legacy, to cement the mythology of his so-called movement. But reality had other plans, because what unfolded in Washington was not triumph, it was humiliation. A spectacle, yes, but one defined by absence, by empty seats, empty streets, and the hollow sound of a leader saluting himself. Trump's team had hyped the event to the heavens. They promised 200,000 attendees. They said Washington would be drenched in red caps and Trump banners. They told the press this was going to be history in the making, a moment for the ages. But when the cameras rolled, the truth was unavoidable. 10,000 people, maybe less, scattered across a city built to hold millions. The crowd was thinner than a Tuesday afternoon of tourists on the National Mall. Whole blocks sat empty. The stands were bare. The only thing louder than the military band was the silence of the no-shows. And there was Trump himself, at the center of it all, standing on the reviewing stand, staring out with that unmistakable look. The look of a man who expected adoration and got indifference. The look of a birthday boy whose party no one attended. Broad daylight humiliation. His face told the story before any commentator could. He was crushed, inconsolable, angry, yet powerless to do anything but wave at the empty air. Imagine it. Tanks grinding down Pennsylvania Avenue, their treads rattling against asphalt, soldiers saluting in sharp formation, banners waving in the breeze. But the backdrop? Rows of empty metal bleachers, empty seats where supporters should have been, wide drone shots that revealed more pavement than people. This was supposed to be his coronation. Instead, it became a funeral procession for his ego. And let's talk about the irony, because in one of the parade's most surreal moments, Trump raised his hand in salute to a line of soldiers dressed in Vietnam-era uniforms. Vietnam, the very war he dodged 5 separate times, lying about bone spurs to escape the draft, while thousands of real young men shipped out and never returned. There he was, playing strongman, saluting an era of service he fled from. The hypocrisy wasn't subtle, it was on parade. But if the empty stands and awkward salutes weren't enough, this disaster came with corporate branding. Coinbase, Palantir, Lockheed Martin, Oracle. The so-called commander-in-chief reduced the U.S. Army to a billboard for corporate sponsors. Soldiers passed out free energy drinks like street vendors, while defense contractors got prime ad placement on Flag Day. The U.S. military for sale to the highest bidder. Patriotism courtesy of Silicon Valley and the war machine. And then there was the Department of Defense's own blunder. On Flag Day, the Pentagon posted what was meant to be a patriotic tribute. But look closely. The flag they posted wasn't the Stars and Stripes. It was the Russian flag. Yes, on the very day Trump paraded himself as America's savior, his Defense Department accidentally flew the flag of Vladimir Putin. You couldn't script irony better if you tried. Now let's talk contrast, because while Trump's parade sputtered in Washington, the rest of America was alive with energy, but not for him. Across the nation, millions took to the streets in the No Kings protest. From Los Angeles to Chicago, San Francisco to Boise, coast to coast, the people marched not to celebrate Trump, but to reject him. The estimates, 5 million people at minimum, some say closer to 10 or 12 million. Either way, the crowds dwarfed his lonely spectacle in D.C. In Los Angeles, an MSNBC reporter broadcast from the 26th floor of City Hall, pointing down to a river of humanity, tens of thousands filling the streets, chanting, singing, waving signs. In San Francisco, protesters formed a massive human banner on Ocean Beach that stretched across the sand like a living message: no kings, no dictators, no Trump. Chicago, San Diego, Boise, Pasadena, everywhere you looked, the people were in motion. And in Pasadena, families showed up with children carrying hand-painted signs. One little girl held a poster that read, "I love naps, but I stay woke." That's democracy alive, mocking the man who thought he could crown himself with tanks and trumpets.
Meanwhile, Trump's spin machine was hard at work. His communications director, Stephen Chung, rushed to Twitter to declare the No Kings protests a failure, claiming only minuscule attendance. The irony? He said this while millions filled the streets, while empty bleachers haunted Trump's parade. Projection has always been the MAGA specialty. Deny reality, invent a new one, and hope the cameras don't pan wide. But this time, the cameras did, and everyone saw. Let's not forget the hypocrisy in Trump's so-called love for the troops. This is the same man who called fallen soldiers suckers and losers. The same man who stayed silent when Americans were killed overseas on his watch. 4 Americans killed in Lithuania, no statement. 2 soldiers killed when he sent troops to the southern border, silence. An Apache helicopter crash killing a service member just days before the parade, again, nothing. The man who wrapped himself in the flag couldn't even muster a sentence when real blood was shed. And yet here he was, bathing in the optics of uniforms and salutes, pretending to be the champion of a military he has always despised. Even the distractions couldn't mask the failure. Secretary of State Marco Rubio slouched and bored as if wondering why he was dragged into this farce. South Dakota's governor, Kristi Noem, clapping without enthusiasm, the face of a guest regretting the invitation. The spectacle didn't inspire awe, it inspired yawns. And if you needed proof that Trump's brand of politics is crumbling, just look at the side-by-side images. Washington, D.C., empty stands, tanks rolling past silence. San Francisco, tens of thousands forming human chains. Los Angeles, crowds stretching for blocks. The difference between power imposed from above and democracy rising from below. One was a staged show, lifeless and corporate. The other was a living movement, spontaneous and massive. Even Gavin Newsom, California's governor, twisted the knife with sarcasm. His office released a statement mocking Trump, calling it the largest presidential birthday party ever. The subtext was clear: the largest party with no guests. And so, on Trump's 79th birthday, what was meant to be a show of dominance became his most public humiliation. The dictator parade became a disaster parade. The attempt to mimic Putin or Kim ended with the image of a lonely old man waving to nobody, pretending to be strong while the country laughed. But this wasn't just a bad day for Trump. It was a warning for America. Because behind the empty stands, the corporate sponsorships, the Russian flag slip-ups, there's something darker. The militarization of politics, the fusion of state and corporate power, the attempt to turn democracy into a stage for one man's ego. These are the hallmarks of authoritarianism, and they failed not because Trump didn't try, but because the people rejected it. From the No Kings protests to the millions in the streets, the message was unmistakable. America doesn't bow to strongmen. We don't salute kings. We don't trade freedom for fireworks. The people still hold the power, and they exercised it not by filling Trump's bleachers, but by emptying them. In the end, history will not remember the tanks or the sponsors or the salutes. It will remember the emptiness. The image of Donald Trump standing in front of rows of vacant seats, saluting soldiers he once called losers, trying to play emperor while the nation marched against him. That image will live longer than any speech he gives, any spin his communications team attempts. Because images tell the truth. This was not strength. It was weakness, exposed. And so, as Trump blew out the candles on his 79th birthday cake, the wish he made was clear. He wished for loyalty. He wished for power. He wished for a sea of supporters to cheer him into history. But wishes are not reality. Reality was empty seats, restless allies, mocking governors, and a nation in protest. Reality was humiliation, live-streamed for the world to see. And maybe that's fitting, because for years, Trump has sold lies dressed as truth, fiction dressed as fact, spectacle dressed as substance. But no lie could fill those bleachers. No fiction could conjure a crowd. No spectacle could disguise the silence. On this day, the emperor had no clothes. Or perhaps more accurately, he had no audience. So here's the lesson. Dictators crave parades. Democrats create movements. Trump wanted tanks, the people delivered signs. He wanted cheers, the people delivered chants of resistance. He wanted adoration, he got indifference. And when history looks back on this parade, it won't call it a triumph. It will call it what it was, the day Trump's fantasy met reality, and reality won.